What is up, Noel Nation? It's the guys from Plant the Spear here to break down this 2024 Florida State football schedule that has officially been released. Only took a few days with the ACC, the way they do it, but we finally got it. I mean, of course, we already knew our opponents. Now we know the order, and it does make a difference. And to be honest, Michael, I got to say, man, I thought we were going to get, with everything that's been going on behind the scenes with FSU and the ACC, I thought we were going to get like the ultimate screw job. I thought you'd get like 6 road games in a row, Clemson and all that stuff. I think they actually did Florida State pretty straight up on this one. I think this was a pretty decent schedule for them, and I'm excited to talk about it, man, because I think this is going to set us up for a good season in 2024. But, before we get into it, how are you, my friend? And thank you for joining me.
I'm doing great. Hey, we're in 2024. We're past all the 2023 is in the mirror. Oh, what a great season. What a terrible ending. But now we're ready to talk about what is 2024 and the schedule. I'm excited for the schedule. I think this sets up well for FSU to continue the climb and be incredibly successful, man. The schedule sets up very well for Florida State.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's funny, like when, again, we knew the opponents already, and then sometimes you just worry a little bit about how things shake out as far as the order of operations go, because I think it does make a difference. And there were some things in there, like we were talking before the show. I think if I had to give this schedule a rating between, say, 1 and 10 on a number scale, I'm probably falling somewhere between a 7 and 8 as far as favorability to us, how much I like it. There's a couple of things in here that I would change. The first thing I will mention is, guys, keep in mind that the NCAA is moving to a 2 bye week schedule going forward, but we have a week 0 game. So that means that you get a 3rd bye week this year.
That's right.
So that is something just to keep in mind with the game over in Ireland. But I think, again, that, when you look at knowing that you get the bye weeks and how everything sets up, we'll talk about the schedule in general first, and then we're going to go into a game-by-game kind of preview of each team. So looking at the overall thoughts, here's some of the notes that I took when I saw some things, the schedule drop. So first off, let's just pop the schedule up here so everybody can see it. In case you haven't seen it, guarantee you probably have, but we'll just take a look at it. This is our schedule poster. I'll be trying to get this available for download for you guys. It's on our social media if you want to go download it, save it, print it, or whatever to keep up with the schedule throughout the year. But the overall thoughts for me to begin with, you get 4 out of your 6 games, first 6 games are all at home. Now, I like that. And here's the thing. I think this team's going to be good. I like what they've done in the transfer portal. The talent floor has gone up. We all know that. I think some of the clunkiness that you saw with the offense last year is when you bring in new pieces, everybody it takes time to gel. It takes time to get on the same page. And as much as you can do in practice, it takes time to get there in a game situation. So the fact that you have not the hardest slate of teams in your first couple of games and you get most of them at home, I think that sets up well for you to kind of get things rolling here. So I do like that. I like that you don't have more than 2 road games back-to-back any point throughout the schedule. Yeah. And the 2 back-to-back road games that you have, one is in your home state, right, and the other is only in North Carolina. So it's not like you have a ton of travel. Like, that was another thing that I liked about the schedule. You don't go to Syracuse this year. You don't go to Boston this year. You don't go to any of the West Coast teams.
That's right.
You have Notre Dame and a trip to Dallas. Those are really your 2 far games, and they're not that. They're very manageable. So I do like that as well. The only thing, now the knocks on the schedule, I would say, I think the BC game is a little bit close with having to travel internationally. I probably would have put it on that Saturday following, the Saturday of Labor Day week that it's on. It is on a Monday night on Labor Day. It gives you a few extra days, but you're coming back from international. I think Mike Norvell even said they were going to hang out a few extra days to let the team have that experience. So, it's going to be tight, but at the same time, the Monday night game on Labor Day pretty much guarantees you a nighttime primetime slot. Oh, yeah, so I think that's huge too. So it's not a big deal. And you get a bye week after that, because I was originally worried, talking about getting screwed by the ACC, I was worried they were going to put a game on that Saturday and you were going to have a short week. And the only team on the schedule that I would have felt comfortable playing on that short of a week would be Charleston Southern. Right. And we already knew that was before Florida. And then the only 2 other things that I would have changed I would have preferred to have the bye weeks before Clemson and before Notre Dame than after. But, that might have been doing Florida State too many
Too
favors
many favors.
if they'd
Yeah.
have done that. But overall, man, I'll let you share some thoughts on the schedule. But I think overall, I think this one really sets up well. I think it's also, it doesn't necessarily matter, but I think it's also nice to know that your fate for the ACC title game will be decided by November 2nd after
Yeah.
that North Carolina game. So you'll
Yep.
know.
You'll
You'll
know.
know. And then so we'll talk some more about that, because I think it is, when you look at some of the bye weeks too, if you know, like the one after Notre Dame almost kind of seems like a waste right before Charleston Southern. But let's just say hypothetically you're locked into that ACC title game.
Right.
Well, now you get a bye week and a kind of a tune-up game to, one, prepare for Florida, and to
Yep.
two, prepare for that ACC title game. So to
Yep.
rest up and get ready for that, because we know they were really banged up in that game last year. So overall, man, I give it about a 7 out of 8, 7 to 8 out of 10. I like the way it sets up, and I'll let you share some thoughts on it. But I think it's pretty about as good as you can ask for.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that I'm probably right there with you. I like the fact that playing that week 0 game again, we saw how beneficial that was when Florida State played the week 0 game and then played LSU in 2022, and how that really kind of set up the momentum for the season. And they really love that. Mike Norvell and that staff, they really love the opportunity to grab a week 0 game, because you get that extra bye. So instead of 2 weeks, now you have 3 weeks. And I feel like the schedule, the buys are, again, the perfect scenario would have been right before Clemson, right before for
Notre Dame.
before Notre Dame. But I think they set up because you kind of the other school of thought would be, man, you don't want to stop playing if you're hot.
Right.
If you're hot, you don't want to stop playing before you play your most important game. You want to play those games,
Right.
rest, then get back in the rhythm, play that important game again, then rest. Because if you stop and you got that 2 weeks off, and then you're going to go into this game kind of cold, that could be.
That's true.
That
That's
could also reverse work in reverse for you. So it's either or. It just depends on which side you are. I think the thing that I'm like, I wish would have been a little bit different is, Florida State has to go to Notre Dame on November 9th. And I used to live in Indiana. That's northern Indiana. That's South Bend.
Yeah.
That's really touching that Michigan, Ohio like area there. So you're getting the cold. I mean, I'm just telling you, man. And Florida State in the month of November at Notre Dame, historically, not so good. So if you look up the record there, when they've played Notre Dame in November at Notre Dame. And so, you just hope that they've just come off playing North Carolina at home. We know that Notre Dame is not the same team they were this year. They're still very, very talented. Marcus Freeman, he's going to have a good defense again. And so you just hope that that Florida State is firing in all cylinders when they go into that really frigid of a game. But overall, I'm with you. I think, I put it 7.5 of just how good this feels. It really sets Florida State up. If they do what we expect them to do, this really sets them up to repeat as ACC title contenders.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, as much as you see all the Florida State fans who live in Florida and the Southeast, they're tweeting about this cold front that we just had come through, but yet everybody's excited to go to the Big Ten. All right, guys, make that trip. Make that trip up to Notre Dame and let me know how fun that game is before you. I know we hate ESPN. I get all that. I still think it would be cool to end up in the SEC. But before you really throw your hat in one ring or the other, go do that game, because long story short, I went to a New England Patriots game on New Year's Eve a few years back, and it was -2. And I'm from the South. I have Southern blood. I thought I was going to die. I was looking for the medical tent. I had hot hands stuck in places I can't talk about on this show. So that was actually their free gift when you came in the gate, was hot hands. So I knew it was going to be a bad experience from the rip. So now sitting in 110-degree heat isn't great either, but it's a different animal.
That's a different animal.
But I will also say too, like you said, I think with not having the bye week beforehand, it does allow you not to have that little bit of rust. I will say neither of those teams have a bye week before you.
Oh, that's good.
So that's fair there.
Yeah.
And then I will also say that, and I hate to say this because I don't want to like put this into the ether or whatever, but if it is a really big, because that Clemson game is still going to be huge, that Notre Dame game is still going to be huge.
Yeah.
Let's say it's either a really hard fought, exciting win or a very painful loss, you get that extra week to kind of recover from it. So on the backside, that is it.
Yep.
And to be honest, man, like I was looking through some of these schedules. If anybody has a gripe, it's got to be Clemson. They
Oh,
they did not do them any favors. They have Georgia to open the season, App State, who always gives some teams a little bit of
yep.
trouble. Then you get NC State, Florida State, and you have Louisville, all
Ooh,
within like kind of the early. Man,
gosh.
they got a little bit of a tough road there. So how we're going to do this, guys, now that we shared kind of our overall thoughts on the schedule, we're just going to go through team by team and just talk a little bit about the game, how we feel about some things. We're going to take a look back at what they did in 2023. I promise you guys, I have put in so much time trying to figure out who is where, but it's like a mad scientist
Right.
experiment now, trying to figure out. I mean, you got guys that look at Miami's tight end. It's his 9th year. He's got a doctorate as a college football player. It's hard to figure out who's where. So until
Right.
teams release their 2024 roster and we get past the spring transfer session, we're just going to be kind of doing the best we can to figure
Right.
out who is where and what. And so we'll go through that. And we're also going to start by taking a little bit of a look at Florida State in the same way we're going to look at the other teams, just so we can refresh our memory on where we're at. But before we get into that, I do want to bring you a message from today's sponsor, Alumni Hall FSU. I want to let you guys know that they just moved to a new location. We've been kind of hinting at this throughout the past few shows. They are all set up now. 1415 Timber Lane Road in the Market Square Shopping Center. Just a better location for them to be able to bring you all the FSU gear that you guys love. Go check them out. Visit their new location. Tell them we sent you. Use code SPEAR. Get 10% off your order. Or, of course, you can shop online. You can even shop online and pick up in store to make it nice and easy. So go check those guys out. They have a great rewards program and all that stuff. So thank you for supporting those that support us. That's Alumni Hall FSU, and the promo code is SPEAR. So, Michael, let's jump into this with a first look at – let's look in the mirror first. Let's look at ourselves.
Right.
So this is Florida State from last year. Now, we know things have changed. And here's the thing when we look at these going forward. Here's what really stands out when you go through some of these numbers. A lot of this stuff is going to change because, like, Florida State, we have no doubt that we know that they've lost a lot of offensive production. But when you see this transfer class rank, that changes things. Now, you'll see some of the other teams that didn't bring in things to the level of Florida State. So it may be more similar to what they did the year before. So we know that Florida State lost a lot, but they brought in a lot, and that can make up for it. So 13-1, obviously we know last year was the record. 9-0 in the ACC. They went 6-0 at home, 5-0 on the road, excluding the bowl game, of course. 2023 team talent rank, Florida State was number 20, which again, we've talked about this in the past.
Yeah.
It's impressive what Mike Norvell has been able to do at Florida State when he has not yet had a team rank in the top 15 of the 247 team composite talent ranking. So he's been able to do a lot with not the most talented roster, which is not what you see at like Florida or Miami. And we're going to talk about that in another show because I got some interesting notes on that. 18th in scoring offense, 34.6 points per game. I have out here this PTB stat. Next to it is prior to the bowl game because we know that thing skewed everything there, averaging about 37 points a game before the bowl. Scoring defense, 18th, allowing 19.3 points per game. That was 15.9 prior to the bowl game. That was a top 10 defense. And your transfer rank currently is third. You have 10 4-stars, 4 3-stars, and the kid from Harvard that just committed is not yet ranked. If they were below a 3-star, they didn't get mentioned on the slide. So the boxes you see down here on the bottom, if you're watching on YouTube, obviously if you're listening on the podcast, we're going to explain all this so you don't, because you obviously don't have the visuals. But this is the best I could nail down for you guys right now because it's just too much to do for the whole roster. But are they bringing back their leading passer, rusher, receiver, and tackler? That at least gives us an idea of your top playmakers and how many are coming back.
Yep.
Now, all those red boxes for Florida State don't look great, but we also know that the ones that they brought in, know are going to help make up for those gaps. So with kind of knowing where we're at now, let's go ahead and jump into game one against Georgia Tech on August the 24th. Of course, we all know this one is in Dublin, Ireland.
Let's go.
In 2023. Yeah, that's going to be a really fun experience for those who are able to go. I'm still on the fence, probably not going to swing it, but it's going to be a really fun experience for the team and everybody to go. I think it's just an exciting opportunity to get like international, should I say, exposure. So in 2023, Georgia Tech, they went 7-6. 5-3 in the ACC. In neutral site games, they were 1-1. The opening game, they did give Louisville a bit of a, they gave them a scare there.
Yep.
But that was also Jeff Brom's first game. This is also a Georgia Tech team that lost to Bowling Green. So their team talent rank last year was 36. Their scoring offense was 43rd, averaging 31.1 points per game. Scoring defense was not very good, 97th, giving up 29.5 points per game. Transfer class rank is currently at 54th with 9 3-star transfers. I updated all this information last night, so it is current as of January 26th. Here, to me, Michael, is what makes this game a little trickier probably than people are giving them credit for. They do bring back almost their entire offense. They bring back their leading passer, leading rusher, both. I don't have it on here, but both of their leading receivers. They bring back 4 out of 5 offensive linemen, unless they lose someone in the spring. And then they bring back their leading tackler. So on offense, it is not because a quarterback change, depending on who you get out of the portal or who you got, it can always be a question mark. But they bring in Haynes King, formerly of Texas A&M. He was a high-ranked guy under Jimbo. No one really does great under Jimbo
unless your name is Jameis Winston. Yeah,
exactly. So it is year 2 under him. So I think that Georgia Tech is probably going to be a little bit better than people give them credit for. That offense returns a ton of production. It's whether they can find some defense or not. Now you see the gap in the talent in the transfer.
Yeah.
They're 36. You were 20th. They're like in the 50s in their transfer class. You're 3rd. So you started higher and you restocked better. So you should win. I think you have to pardon me on this because I don't remember, but I think they opened up somewhere around a 2-touchdown favorite over Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I thought I saw that too. Yeah.
So I think this is a game that you feel good about, that you can win. But I still think this game, just being game 1 with a lot of transfers, we saw how the continuity paid off for Florida State last year when you returned all that production. I think just game 1, getting through some things, it could be a little bit trickier than people think, but I still think this is a game you feel good about winning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think so. I look at this Georgia Tech team and, Haynes King, yes, it's his 2nd year. He threw 27 touchdowns, last season, but man, he threw 16 interceptions.
Yeah.
That offense was consistent and then inconsistent. It was very inconsistent.
Right.
They beat Miami because Miami make it of the most bonehead of bonehead plays when they should have lost to Miami. So we do have to take that into account. They should have lost that game. That game was lost until Miami didn't take a knee, right? So if you take that out, really the significant thing they did was they beat a top 20 North Carolina team, right?
Right. Who fell apart throughout the season.
Fell apart towards the end of the year, right? They did go into their bowl game. They beat University of Central Florida. I think it was like 30-17 or something like that. And now people will point to, well, they played Georgia close, but let's just be real. Georgia wasn't very interested in that game. They were thinking about the SEC title game. Yep. And so do I think this could be a game? Yes, I think this could be a game. I think they've improved their talent. I think Brent Key has shown, that in the 2nd year, he is trying to elevate their program. I mean, they did much better than it was on the previous coach, Collins, I think his name was.
Yeah.
And so this could be a game, but it should stop being a game probably after the 3rd quarter. Like Florida State should run away with this game in my estimation.
Yeah, and I will say too about the Georgia game real quick. Brock Bowers did not play in that game.
That's correct.
And they also, that game was 31-13 at the beginning of the 4th quarter, before maybe Georgia took their foot off the gas. But I still, like I said, I don't think you're going to blow them out. But I do think that it could be a game that you should win. I really think the biggest question mark for Florida State this year is, one, are they going to land another defensive tackle and linebacker in the portal? That would make me feel a lot better about the defense going forward. And 2, how are these talented but unproven receivers going to transition onto the field?
That's
if I feel good about, we pretty much know what we're getting in quarterback, offensive line, tight end, all these things.
Yep.
But it's the receivers that are the big question mark. They have a lot of talent. But how does that translate? So if they end up being as good as we think they can, as they live up to their potential, this team can be really, really good. So
really good early on.
And unless they haven't really, unless they've really beefed up that defense, I like that their defense was their weak point last year. Because, a lot of times defense is ahead of offense in preparation.
Right.
So I think that one sets up well. So now looking at game 2, you come back from across the pond with hopefully a win under your belt. And again, now you are starting with 2 ACC games. So you have a chance to really kind of jump out to a good start in the conference.
Right.
Game 2 is going to come against Boston College at home. This is their first game of the season. They don't play anybody before you. And you are looking at a Monday night game on Labor Day. Again, this is more than likely going to guarantee you a primetime night game.
Yeah,
It's still going to be interesting to see how things play out inside Doak Campbell Stadium with the reduced capacity in 2024. But you still get the home crowd. You don't have to go all the way up to Boston. They're going to have to come down to that humidity in Florida. And last time they came here, you beat them 44-14. So
that's right.
we will see. I mean, of course, they have Thomas Castellano still at quarterback, who can give you a little bit of fits there. He was their leading passer and rusher last year. So looking at them 7-6 last year, it's funny, man, because everybody talked about Boston College. They ended up being as good as Miami.
That's
So
right. That's right.
record wise, so they ended up being pretty decent. But 3-5 in the ACC. Their road record was 3-2 last year. So okay on the road. Team talent ranked 54th. Again, this is just another one of those games where you should just have the talent advantage. Scoring offense, 82nd, 24.8 points per game. Not too great on both sides of the ball here. Looking at their scoring defense, which was 86 at 28.3. So they're actually giving up more points than they scored last year. And their transfer class rank is 43rd, currently with 10 3-stars committed. So again, you have a higher team talent rank, and you also have a higher transfer rank by 40 spots. And I feel like you have the coaching edge there. So this is a game you feel good about as well. They do bring back their leading passer, rusher, receiver, and they did lose their leading tackler, Vinny DePalma, at linebacker. So again, I mean, this is another one of those games where I know things. Oh, and I do want to mention one of their transfers. This should be interesting. Trayshawn Ward at running back.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
so he
yeah.
will be making a return to Tallahassee. Oddly
That's
enough,
right.
in I don't know if they actually tagged theirs Garnet, but in Garnet and Gold, essentially, it's going to be.
Yeah.
We don't even know which team he's going to play for. Who knows? Because he could.
Hopefully,
Who knows?
yeah.
Right, but it might get confusing. You might forget he's not on your team. But the thing is, like, they did lose. I do know that they lost Christian Mahogany, their best offensive lineman, their guard. Phil Garwo, the running back, who's really been good for them, had a down year last year. He's out as well. They also lost some pieces off the defense, but this is a team that the only hang up for me on this one is coming off the international travel from Ireland, but you get a couple extra days with it being the Monday night game. You have the week off afterwards. So, you can kind of let it all hang out. You have the 2 games in kind of a tight window when you talk about the travel factor, but then you get a week to kind of rest up and heal up there. But I think this is, again, you're more talented, you have a coaching edge, and you've done better in the transfer portal. You'll already have a game under your belt where they will not. To me, this is another winnable game for Florida State.
That's right. Oh yeah, I really believe that.
And I don't think it's going to be a 2-point game again. I don't think, like, we know the flu had something to do with that. The red bandana game, you take all that out. I think this reverts back to the mean of it being a wider score gap.
Correct. Yes. I mean, you remember last time Boston College came to Florida State in 2022. They opened the game with a Trey Benson 99-yard kickoff return, I think it was. I mean, and that game was over by the second quarter. It was completely done. And so I agree. What I think, if we could, red bandana at Boston College, the flu game, all those things, and as well as we only had 2 game tape films on Castellanos.
Right, yeah, because they started the other kid, Emmett Moorhead. He started, and then they made the switch, and it was switch. It was a wild card.
It was a wild card. Like they really hadn't fully developed the offense. Well, in that Florida State game, you really saw how they were going to use him. So Florida State and Adam Fuller, they have really good tape on him now to know how to play him better this year. And he is turnover prone. Again, I'm going to keep calling this out. The dude threw 14 interceptions last season with 15 touchdowns. Now, he did run for over 1,000 yards and he passed for a little over 2,200 yards. And so, if the defense can contain him, keep him, not rushing for 100 yards in that game. Because I don't remember what the final rush number, but he was over 100 yards in that game. If we can contain him, hold him to 50 yards or less, and let the defense do what it does, then this game should be over by the third quarter. I mean, clearly it should be. It's Labor Day. It's going to be a night game. All the country is going to be watching. It's going to be one of 2 maybe games on the television that day, which is Florida State has historically performed very well. I mean, you take out that heartbreaking Miami loss where we fumbled on the in the end zone. It was a Christian Ponder year. Can't remember the guy who fumbled. But anyways, You take out that game, Florida State has historically performed very well on Labor Day games. And so I would imagine they would do the same again with Boston College at home. First game It'd be the first game in Doak where we get
Yep.
to see how the seating capacity
Yeah.
is working. But I have confidence that they should be 2-0 at this point.
Right. And you figure even with the reduced capacity, you'll be louder than half of the teams are used to playing in because it'll still be a higher capacity than most of the stadiums. And
That's
yes,
right.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think that the key here is controlling what Castellanos is able to do, mostly on the ground.
Right.
Like you said, it kind of was a surprise. They didn't really. I thought Moorhead was going to start. I didn't think he was going to.
Yeah.
I didn't think that Castellanos was going to be your starter in that game. And then also do keep in mind that of the 29 points, like Florida State at one point was up like 31-10. They went on a 28 run.
Yeah, exactly.
And one of those scores was on defense, on a scoop and score. So they
That's
didn't
right.
score 29 points on your defense. So again, I'm with you, man. I feel like they should do pretty good there as far as getting this win here in, maybe not 44-14, but comfortable. I think they should be able to do that. So game 3 coming up. Now, I'm going to be honest, Michael. Some people are blowing me off here. I think this is going to be a really fun matchup because of the history. This is where Mike Norvell came from. I think this game could be a little bit trickier than people think it is. Now, because Memphis, there for a while when Mike Norvell left, they floundered a little bit, and it kind of almost made you feel a little better about Norvell.
Right.
You almost like to see a team stumble when their coach leaves because that tells you how good the coach is. And so, game 3 against Memphis. This is going to be coming off of a bye week. I do want to mention that first. The Saturday, I guess in a sense, a bye week because you play on that Monday, but a Saturday bye week, the 7th of September 7th. So you will be coming off a bye week. You get extra time to prepare. It is at home on September 14th. Now, Memphis, the reason I say this game is a little bit trickier, they did good last year, 10-3, 6-2 in their conference. They were 5-0 on the road. So they brought it with them whenever they traveled. Again, you have a decided advantage in talent here. Their team talent rank in 2023 was 64th. Their scoring offense was 6th, so their offense is legit. Now, 39.4 points per game. We're going to talk about that offense in just a second. Scoring defense was 95th. So this is a narrative that you see about a lot of teams now going through the schedule is it's rare to see some balanced teams anymore. Like you have Notre Dame was very balanced. Florida State was balanced. A lot of these teams don't really play good defense. So they gave up 28.8 points per game. Transfer class currently comes in at 67th, so not super impressive there. 14 three-star transfers as it stands right now. They do bring back their leading passer, and this is one of the reasons why I think this game could be a little tricky. The Seth Hennigan kid, it is year 4 for him. He's thrown for 3,000 or more yards in 3 consecutive years, so that's big. Now, they do lose their leading rusher, and that kid was good. He was 1,000-plus yard rusher, 14 touchdowns on the season. And here's the thing. Their running back number 2 only has put up 300 yards and 2 touchdowns last year. So you're looking at almost 1,000-yard drop-off because I think he did have a little bit more. He had more than 1,000. I just put this as a 1,000-yard rusher and 12 touchdown difference. That's a really, really big difference there. They do bring back their leading receiver, who was a 1,000-yard receiver, and their wide receiver number 2 is also back, and he caught 900 yards of passes last year. So they got a good passing offense that you're going to have to deal with. And then, of course, their leading tackler does come back as well. They did lose. Like I said, they lost a couple of pieces. I'm not going to say that they didn't lose anybody. And you have a decided talent advantage. But the one thing that I mentioned this before, and people kind of blew me off on why this game could be tough. Keep in mind, this is the same Memphis team. Now, I'll be honest. I think Missouri last year, they gave Georgia a little bit of a run. It was a close game. I think it was 8 points in the end. They also barely beat, I think it was Eastern Kentucky. So they had some close games there. But at the same time, this is a Memphis team that went on the road to Missouri, and lost by 1 score. So they gave Memphis, who finished as I believe a top 15 team, they gave them fits. So I think this is not a game that you can sleepwalk through. I'm not predicting a loss here by any means, but I just think this one, you may not be kicking back, relaxing in their stadium, in your new and improved stadium seat until maybe a little later in the fourth quarter. But obviously, it's going to be fun. Mike Norvell knows that coaching staff.
That's right.
At least the head coach Ryan Silverfield, who was his offensive line coach, he also knows Mike Norvell. So there's that connection there. But I think this game will, honestly, dude. I guess what I'm trying to get at here is I think Memphis is probably tougher than a good bit of your ACC games.
Yeah.
Probably a tougher team than Boston College, probably a tougher team than maybe even Georgia Tech. So I don't think you can sleepwalk through this one. I still think you should win just on a talent perspective, getting them at home and getting a week off. And before they come to you, they play Troy. Troy is no slouch.
That's
And they
right.
have Middle Tennessee the week after. So I still think you win this game to start the season 3-0. But, again, I wouldn't sleepwalk through this one.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this game is going to be more so for Mike Norvell than the players. I won't say emotional, but, he has a great affinity and love for Memphis. Memphis obviously was his first head coaching job. And so, he probably has a lot of love for that place, but as well as he's a competitor. He probably wants to beat their brains out to be like, look, see, I did go to big and better, right?
Right.
And so you just hope that all those, that doesn't get in the distraction of the game plan, which Mike has proven over his course of his to really focus in on that. I do think the thing for us to watch out is the quarterback, Seth Hennigan. I mean, he is dynamic, 32 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He's really good. Now, again, like I think you mentioned this, the Blake Watson, he's off to the NFL. He was kind of the catalyst for that offense to get it all started and going. But man, they return Rock Taylor, their receiver, who is really good.
Yeah.
Really good. I think he had 69 catches for a little over 1,000 yards last year as well. And so you just hope that that they take this game seriously. They put this game away. I mean, if I had to guess, this is probably a noon game, which I hate. It's on the CW. It'd be great if this was like a 3:30 game, because then the crowd will be a little bit more amped. And Memphis, they don't play in stuff like this. I mean, let's be real. Yes, they went to Missouri, but Missouri still, that stadium is not the same. Even with Florida State at Doak with reduced capacity, the way it's shaped, the noise, all of that, this will be different for Memphis. And so I think this will be a close game early, but late Florida State should pull away based on the talent right now. For a win.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. He has a soft spot in his heart for Memphis. I don't think it's going to keep him from trying not to run the score up, because it is what it is. And you learned your lesson last year that you got to. It's how you win, not that you win. A lot of times. But at the same time, they have an affinity for him. They loved Mike Norvell, and I hope they travel well, because that fan base, when we first took Mike Norvell from them, it was a very cordial handoff. You know what I mean? It was a cohesive handoff. They were happy for him as well. So I think that could be just a fun game atmosphere as well. So I do think that you get the win there. Like I said, I just think that game is probably tougher than even the next one we're going to talk about.
Right.
And that is game 4 against Cal.
Can you believe this? Cal.
It's crazy, man. In the Atlantic Coast Conference. So it doesn't, dude. This is getting out of hand here. But I think the thing is, man, like, I'm just glad you don't have to go to Cal, because I'm glad we talked about it before. I'm glad you don't have to make that really long cross country flight after also having to go to the game in Ireland and everything. But they will be, the interesting thing coming off of this one too, though, they will be coming off of a game against San Diego State. So maybe AJ Duffy, who is the quarterback who transferred to San Diego State, maybe he can give them a little preview of what Florida State's going to be ready to do. And then they have a bye after this game. So looking at Cal, again, September 21st at home. Last year they had a pretty disappointing season. Now, Cal's not really been a great team in general, but they did give Auburn a pretty close game last year. And, Auburn was a very hit or miss team, had close games against Georgia, close games against Alabama, got blown out by New Mexico State. So they did put up a fight, at least against an SEC team last year. 6-7 on the season, 4-5 in conference. They were 3-3 in road games, and I'm pretty sure they didn't play many East Coast road games.
No,
so this is gonna be a long one for them, because I'm pretty sure Auburn was at home last year. 2023 team talent ranked 45th, so they're at least in the top 50 there. Scoring offense 48th at 30.2 points per game. Scoring defense was awful. This is the trend that I saw when we started scouting all these teams. 114th. Now, of course, they did play some pretty good offenses. Like, I believe they played Oregon and Washington last year, giving up 32.8 points per game. So the defense is going to need some work for them. Now, here's what did stand out when I looked at Cal: 26 in the transfer class. They have a decent one. They have 5 4-stars.
Mm.
And that's actually, when you look at what everybody else has done, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And 6 3-stars. Of course, there's a couple of guys I believe they have that are below that, are not ranked. Notable returns. They do bring back their leading passer, but the thing about this too is he was a freshman last year. He was not their full-time starter, but he did get enough experience to come back this year. They do bring back their leading rusher, who rushed for 1,315 yards. So that kid is legit. Now I will say, when you look at some of the receivers, they lost their leading receiver and their leading tackler. But this is, again, man, this is a game that you get at home. They're coming all the way from the West Coast. They weren't very good last year. I think it was like their first time in a few years making a bowl last year.
Yep.
You got the talent edge. I suspect with the transfer class that they signed, they will be better. But I still think this will be a little bit of an East Coast butt whip. You'll send them back. You remember the old East Coast, West Coast rival in the rap game back in the day? Yeah, I think this is going to be all East Coast on this one.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I mean, one of the things, their quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, he's a Miami native. So he's coming back to this side of the country, probably play in front of some friends and family, and they'll be super excited for about kickoff, and then that game should be over. I mean, he 14 touchdowns, 10 interceptions last season. He finally got the starting job. They ended up losing. I think they lost their bowl game. And they were, when you say the scoring defense was what, 114?
Yeah.
And yes, they played some good teams, but they got absolutely mollywopped. They gave up 50 plus points 4 times last season, including to Oregon, where they lost 63-19. I mean, it was a beatdown. And yes, they play Auburn again this year. They have UC Davis and San Diego State, like you said, before they come to Florida State. And so Florida State's coming off of Memphis to play Cal. They'll be engaged in this game. This will probably be another one of those, I just don't know. I don't know how the ACC is gonna try to schedule these games, but I have a sneaking suspicion might have back-to-back CW games for this, which will be dumb because Florida State draws the eyes. And plus, everyone's going to want to see how Florida State responds this year after the snub last year. So
right. And after last year's CW game, I say we just boycott all.
Exactly.
We are not doing that again.
Not doing that again. But I have Florida State winning this one comfortably pre-spring. Now, we'll see kind of what comes out with the roster with Cal, what happens with Florida State, some of the receivers that we've pulled in. But I have Florida State winning this one comfortably. And, welcome to the ACC, Cal.
Right, exactly. Our palm trees go through hurricanes, so they're a little tougher than yours. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see, the kid. I'm sure he'll be hyped up to come back to his home state. But if you want a little vote of confidence here, talking about that 114th ranked defense, DJ, your quarterback now at Oregon State, threw for 275 and 5 touchdowns in that game. So, yeah. That's big numbers. He also ran the ball 5 times for 14 yards. Not a whole lot there, but he put up 5 touchdowns through the air on them. So, your quarterback has already faced that defense, and he lit them up. So I think, again, man, like you said, they gave up 50, 60 points at a lot of occasions here. So to me, I think it's really just that talent edge. And then I also like that you've had a few games to kind of get yourself in rhythm, your offense in rhythm. And if you can kind of expose that defense for what it is, then I think you can run away with that one for sure. So now looking at the next game, game 5, again,
get into the meat.
Another new ACC opponent against SMU, a powerhouse from way back in the day. And then they have kind of, they fell off with all the things that happened back then, and they've kind of built their way back up. They had a good season last year. This is an away game on September the 28th. Looking at SMU last year, now, of course, they play in Dallas, for those of you that don't know. It's not a giant stadium, so it's not like, it's not, I looked at their first game, and there was like 20,000 people in attendance. So it's not probably, now you'll get a bigger draw for a name like FSU, but I'm sure a lot of the Texas Seminole clubs and all that stuff, you're probably going to see a good bit of Garnet Gold in that stadium as well.
Yeah.
They're going to be excited for that. I've already had people comment on some shows and stuff where they're like, I'm excited about this one because I get to finally go to a game close to home. So it's not going to be really a daunting environment. Now, when you look at SMU. So they went 11-3 last year. Great season. But here's what stands out. They were 0-3 versus Power 5.
That's right.
Looking back at I went back and I was like, well, when's the last time they beat a Power 5 team? And it was in 2021 when they beat 5-7 TCU. So it wasn't really a very good Power 5 team that they beat. And since their last win, they're 1-5 against Power 5 teams. So that's what makes you feel a lot better about this game. Now, I will say that when you look at, and first off, they were 6-0 at home. So, again, they're better at home. But looking at the 2023 talent rank, they're at 34th. So they're more talented than pretty much every other team that we've talked about up to this point. So, the potential is there. I will say that. But the scoring offense, again, good here. 8th, 38.7 points per game versus Power 5. And I made sure to make a note of this. Versus Power 5, they were scoring 14 points a game.
Yeah.
So not too great there. It's just, again, man, it's the thing is when you look at, and I just want to mention this real quick, is when you look at what a lot of those Big 12 teams did last year coming into the first year of being a Power 5 team, the UCFs, the BYUs, I think pretty much every one of them finished like way below what they did as a non-Power 5 team.
Yeah.
So making that jump is not easy. Now, if you're watching at YouTube at home, I must have forgot to change this one. The scoring defense was not 114th. It was much better. Their scoring defense was 11th, and they were giving up 17.8 points per game. But against Power 5 teams, that number jumps to 28.3. Versus non-Power 5 teams, it was 16.4. So again, That's a huge – you're talking about going at so here's the thing. Their scoring offense against non-Power 5 teams averaged 43.1 points per game. Ooh. Against Power 5 teams, 14. Oof. Their scoring defense against non-Power 5 teams gave up 16.4 points per game versus Power 5 teams, 28.3. That's a night and day difference. Now, their transfer class is at 34th. And they do bring in 1 4-star and 10 3-stars. So they have a pretty good 11 Power 5 transfers. So they have a pretty good transfer class. They do bring back their leading passer, their leading rusher, which I have a question mark next to this because I haven't seen him confirm that he's coming back. I haven't seen him say that he's going to the NFL. But little tidbit for you here, it's Jalen Knighton. Most of you probably remember that from Miami, the Rooster Kid. Yes. So we were in on his recruitment, and then they do lose their top receiver, and they do bring back their top tackler. Now, when you talk about the quarterback who comes back, this is he's a good player, but from what I understand, and I don't follow SMU that closely, but I think he actually got like a season-ending injury their last regular season game. Now, he should be back for the season, obviously, if it's a leg fracture or something like that. But you may miss some of that prep time. He may not be full go in spring, so that could make a difference. And looking at what they did against Power 5 last year, they lost to Oklahoma 28-11. They lost to TCU 34-17. TCU was 5-7 last year. It was not a very good team, and they got handed to. And then they lost to Boston College. Welcome to the ACC.
Welcome to the ACC.
Everybody was like, I bet SMU comes in and makes some noise and all this in the ACC. Well, you just kind of beat a mid to bottom tier SEC team or ACC team, and you lost in the bowl game. So, and they had some opt-outs in that game as well, too.
That's right.
So that's going to be interesting. Now, they did beat number 22 Tulane last year, and they did beat Memphis. So they're not a slouch. But again, I just think this is that transition period from until you are able to build up to that Power 5 level. It's just a different conversation when we talk about the Big 12 teams. Like I said, the UCFs, who was like, we're the, everybody, for those of you that don't know, Miami, Florida, Florida State are referred to as the Big 3 in the state of Florida. So they were always, flapping the gums about
the Big 4.
We're Big 4. We're Big 4. And it's like, okay, buddy, wait till you go play in a Power 5 conference. And then they did not do so well. So
correct.
It's just a different conversation. But I think I think SMU is a team that with that Power 5 in a few years, I think they could come up. But I think right now, I think Florida State's a better team and gets the win here on the road.
That's right. What's the old saying? This ain't your great granddaddy's SMU, right?
Exactly. And they talked a little smack when we opened up the law. So we can't wait to get you to Dallas. How rude of you. It's like, first off, you haven't been in the ACC long enough to get screwed.
That's right.
Like we have. So just wait. But they think they got something coming for us in Dallas, and I think they're going to be in for a rude awakening.
That's right. This ain't your great granddaddy's SMU. If you've never seen that 30 for 30 with called the Pony Express, you should go watch it.
Yeah.
SMU used to be, like you said, back in the day, a powerhouse. You ain't one now.
Right.
And Florida
That
State
foundation
coming.
got termites.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. The death penalty sent you back down. I mean, they do return their like you said, they do return Preston Stone, their quarterback. I think he was injured in that game against Boston College, so he couldn't play in that game. And so, but they lost that game. You're right. He threw 28 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. I mean, so their offense is going to be impressive. You know, Rhett Lashlee. Did I say that correct?
Lashlee.
Lashlee, who was the former offensive coordinator at Miami, who did give Florida State some trouble. Let's not forget that.
Kept in Miami.
They should have kept in Miami. You're right. And so he's going to have a good game plan. Adam Fuller and that defense is familiar with him, and so it won't be so foreign. You're not playing a team that you've never seen before because the coordinator, you've played against that coordinator. So that should, familiarity breeds an opportunity to play well against them. So you'll see that as well. That defense, I mean, you're right. They played really well against non-Power 5 teams, right? But when they played Power 5 teams, I mean, they gave up 17 points to both Oklahoma and a terrible TCU team. I'm sorry, they got beat by 17 points by Oklahoma and a terrible TCU team. So now here's what I'm saying. I think Florida State should win this game, but I wouldn't be surprised if Florida State is in a dogfight in the fourth quarter against them. I'm not saying it's going to be the whole fourth quarter is going to come down to a field goal kick or a last second touchdown or something like that. But I think probably midway in the fourth quarter, we might be sweating a little bit.
Yeah. I could see that too, because one, this is your first true road game.
This is
that's
because
Ireland is it's obviously a neutral site. It's just kind of a crapshoot of who shows up, has the most fans that travel. You know, most people are going to cheer for both teams because they don't recognize either one. But this will be your first true road game. It's not a big environment like we talked about. And for what it's worth, if you believe in look ahead games and whatnot, you have Clemson come to town next week.
Right.
So that's an interesting one. Now, I will say they have TCU the week before, and then they have Louisville the week after. Oof. So that could be a tough stretch for them. TCU's not really that great, but they did beat them 34-17, like we mentioned last year. So that could be a tough stretch for them.
Yeah, that's not going to be an easy stretch for them. And yeah, as you mentioned, Florida State is going to, inherently be thinking about Clemson. That's coming back to Doak the following week after that. So of course, this is if there's a trap game of trap games,
yes,
this is the one on the schedule, right?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I still think that you'll be able to get things done.
Yeah.
But like you said, I think it could be closer just being on the road, your first road game,
That's
and a potential trap game with Clemson coming the next week. It sets up.
Yeah.
Just like I said, this is why we're doing pre-spring and post-spring.
That's right.
Once you see the spring game, you get to see some of these. Someone asked me the other day, do I think the spring game matters? I said, no, I don't think it matters in a sense, but it's our first look to the public eye at some of these new receivers and things. So if they come out and they look really good, and maybe they clean up with a few more pieces in the portal, I think that makes you feel better about games like these. But again, it's a good offense, so they could give you some fits.
Right. And the other side of this real quick before we move on to the next team is the reason why the spring is not going to show you much of like, oh, they're going to be dominant, but it shows you're looking for battles. You're looking for position battles. You're looking to see how the receivers progress, how DJ is responding to the offense. Does it look smooth? All those things. Right. But the most important part about the spring that, is that one makes you want to pay attention is what happens after. This is the second portal season, right? So who's leaving, who's coming in? That's why the spring's important.
That part, because you're still going to have people that are going to hit the door because you're over the scholarship limit. Now, we've talked about with NIL, you can basically have kids as a PWO and you can pay the scholarship way, but you're going to have some people who aren't going to be starters that are going to find the door. So, and then you just want to see things like you don't want maybe a guy like Earl Little Jr., who we think is going to be an amazing DB for you. If he goes out there and gets smokes for 3 touchdowns, Okay, we
Not
might
your
need to
word.
temper, yeah, we need to temper expectations. But if you see, again, if you just see, like you said, if you see DJ and the new receivers firing on all cylinders, we're cooking this year. So we
That's
got
right.
something to go with. And speaking of DJU, let's talk about a game that I think is going to
Let's
be
talk about it.
the one of the funnest games, one of the biggest games of the year, just because again, like it's a crazy year, man. You got a game where your head coach faces his old team, your
Yep.
new quarterback faces his old team. Like college football has gone. This is college football gone wild. So like it's going to be exciting, man. But looking at this Clemson game, you get them at home. Huge, 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 huge. You get them at
Huge.
home because I'll jump and then we'll jump back. Remember this last year, the away was 2-3 on the road.
Yeah, they
And
were.
so they got absolutely smoked by Duke in game one.
Oh gosh,
So
yeah.
that was when you knew things had come to roost for Clemson there a little bit. So game 6 against Clemson, October 5th, at home in Doak Campbell Stadium. Did you see the emoji?
I just saw the emoji.
I was wondering what you were laughing about. So for those of you on the podcast that can't see on YouTube, we'll get there eventually. I have the transfer class rank, and for Clemson, I just put a laughing emoji because it's Dabo doing Dabo things. He just
That's
doesn't.
right.
It's just I don't even know what to say about that. So I just decided to have a little fun with that. So yeah, I mean this one is still here's what stands out with Clemson. So first off, you get them outside of Death Valley. Now you were able to go knock them off in Death Valley, and keep in mind last year they beat Notre Dame, they beat North Carolina. You were the only team to beat them in Death Valley last year. They're good at home. They're a different team on the road. 9-4, 4-4 in the ACC, 2-3 in road games. Here's why Clemson is still a dangerous game. 2023 team talent rank 5th. That roster is still loaded. Now, their offense has taken a big step back. 52nd scoring offense, 29.8 points per game. We know that Cade Klubnik is one of those guys that he came in as a talented prospect.
That's right.
But he is a turnover machine. And so unless they get that fixed, they're in trouble because they don't really have anyone else to go to at this point. And their scoring defense was 30th, allowing 21.1 points per game. And I have a note here that says that was their worst, their highest amount of points allowed since 2015. So that defense has steadily decayed since Venables left. And now in 2022, it was at 20.9. So just a shade lower. But again, you see the trend of how that defense has gotten a little bit worse. And we're going to talk about that in just a second because I have some notes here. But the transfer class rank obviously gets a laugh emoji here because they haven't signed anybody, not a single person. Now, they have lost. I also have here that they have lost 10 transfers so far. 6 3-stars, 2 4-stars. Now, they do bring back their leading passer, their leading rusher, because believe it or not, Phil Maffa was their leading rusher last year. They do bring back their leading receiver, who I believe was a freshman, so he's not going anywhere anytime soon. Then they lose their leading tackler, which that's kind of where I want to focus on things here. So we know their offense. First off, you have to say that they lost Bo Collins, who was one of their better receivers.
That's right.
Notre Dame. You'll get to see him later in the season.
That's right.
They did lose Will Shipley.
Yes, finally.
Exactly.
Finally.
Like that dude's got probably kids and a mortgage now. He's got to go get a real job. So I mean, I'm sure he's got a master's, a PhD, and all that stuff. So, I don't know who their next little white receiver will be that's going to play there for 15 years. But, after Hunter Renfrow and now Shipley, like I'm sure they got someone waiting in the wings.
Exactly.
But they did lose some pieces. They lost a couple of pieces on the offense, but the offense wasn't what scared you. It was the defense that was so good for them. Now, of course, we know we're going to find out. Like last year, the Duke game exposed them. Now, again, a lot of that was what they did, turnover and things like that. But they kind of struggled a little bit to start the season. Now, they get Georgia this year. So we're going to see just how good they are game 1. But that defense, man, they lose Jeremiah Trotter Jr. That's their leading tackler. Excellent linebacker, declared for the draft. They do get the Barrett kid back. I believe that's his name. He will be back. It's Barrett Carter. Yeah, he'll be back. He's a very talented linebacker, but they have pretty much now. Here's the thing. Clemson, when you talk about the team talent rank, they have recruited. They are going to replace most. This is another reason why they don't really go to the portal. They are still replacing 4 and 5 stars with 4 and 5 stars. They still have a very high blue chip ratio. I mean, you don't see Georgia do a lot in the transfer portal. You didn't see Alabama do a lot, but they did something. Clemson does nothing in the portal. But they have lost basically their entire starting defensive line, their best linebacker. They've lost, I think, 3 cornerbacks and at least 1 or 2 of their safeties. So, or their second or third best safety when you talk about Makuba. So that defense has a lot of pieces to replace. And you're
Right.
also talking about a defense that's kind of decayed a little bit, like we
That's
talked
right.
about. So if it just, for me, Clemson this year is going to be, can Klubnik not be a turnover machine?
Correct.
And their offense finds some life without Will Shipley and without Bo Collins and with still a receiving core that's not that dynamic.
That's
And
right.
then can their defense still be the Clemson defense that we know with losing all those pieces? Now, they're going
Yeah.
to bring in talented guys. They're going to have
Absolutely.
6 games or 5 games or whatever they get before then. Now, they do get Stanford before you, and I have a note that that's home because obviously
That's
traveling
right.
to California would make a difference. They have Wake
Right.
Forest after, not a big deal there. But I think just getting them at home, finally having the confidence to know that you can beat this team. Because, guys,
Right.
I mean, remember, it
Whew.
had been a long
7
time.
straight. Yeah.
It had been a long time since you had beat them. So now the fact that you have that confidence, you got DJ as your quarterback. You know
That's
he's
right.
going to be motivated for this game. Now, all the motivation can be great in the world. You can still go get
Yeah.
your face kicked in. But I
Yep.
think he's going to have a chip on his shoulder because they said he was the problem, and
That's
it
right.
proved that he was not the problem. So I think he's
That's
going to
right.
be very motivated for this game. This is going to be a big one. I'm sure it's going to be a sold-out night game, depending on what Clemson does early in the season. I don't think they're going to beat Georgia, so they'll probably be a one-loss team coming in. But if I had to pinpoint your win-loss floor, this is one of the games that you put as the highest probability that you could lose.
Correct.
Just because they have a higher talent ranking than you.
Correct.
They are still have a loaded roster. But, man, I think you get it done at home. I just think you have, even with the unproven pieces, I just think Clemson seems to be fading
Yeah.
where Florida State seems to be climbing, and I think you've kind of passed them a little bit. So I
Yeah.
think Clemson's still going to be a good team, but I think you get it done in Doak this year.
Yeah, I mean, this game, every year this game comes around, and you're like, there are some years you're clearly like, yeah, we about to get our butts handed to us.
Yeah, right.
And then you have a game like 2021 where they go to Clemson and they're literally a screw job from the referee and a 4th down conversion from winning the game. Like,
Right.
and they had no business being in that game, right? That was the Toafili toe touching on the sideline
Right.
game. And so, yeah, they get Georgia at Mercedes-Benz. Let's just go ahead and call that an L. Doesn't matter who's playing for Georgia. That's probably an L, right?
Yeah. We're probably all playing for second place this year.
Exactly.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. But then they got Appalachian State at home, which is a game that, man, Appalachian State, App State, they give people trouble, especially if your name is North Carolina.
Exactly. 2 double overtime games in a row. So, yeah,
so you got that. Now they do get the bye week. So they got 2 games, the bye week. Then they get back-to-back games with NC State and Stanford at home before they come to Florida State. So in theory, you have basically 5 weeks to get that offense and defense figured out. Now, this is year 2 with Garrett Riley, who's the brother of Lincoln Riley out at USC. The offense did get better as the year went on, but you still had inconsistency from Cade Klubnik. So you're not really sure. He's either a redshirt sophomore or a junior. I'm not really sure. But so this is 3rd year of him. 2nd year as a full-time starter. If he doesn't put it together this year, then is it Garrett? Is it anybody, or is it Dabo? Right? That's the question becomes.
right.
They went 10-3 in 2022. They went 9-4 in 2023. So as you said, you see the steady decline. This is the first game that's a toss-up for me. Like, I want to pick Florida State because Florida State is at home, but it's also Clemson, who has proven, as they had the 7-game win streak, they can come and Doak and beat you. I'm going to give the slight advantage to Florida State because it's at home, because Florida State is on the climb and Clemson seems to be in decline. I mean, I remember listening late December, early January about the Clemson people, the Clemson media, saying that they felt like this was the year that Dabo was going to take advantage of the transfer portal. It wasn't going to be as much, but kind of like in the veins of Georgia and Alabama, they look for that 1 to 4, immediate impact players, but they've done nothing. Right. And so I don't know if they're waiting for the spring to do that, but if not, then I mean,
yeah, if they could go out and get if they could go out and get a wide receiver, I mean, it changes their entire perspective.
Yeah.
But it's still crickets, and
That's
so
right.
I love it. I love it. Don't
I
Dabo,
love it.
don't go get anybody, please. I do think Klubnik is a true sophomore because I think I remember his first year he was a true freshman and he looked like a true freshman in some of those games, but still it didn't seem to get a lot better throughout the season last
Okay.
year.
Okay.
So it will be interesting to see, like you said, who's going to be to blame here because
That's right.
since Dabo's not had a really high level quarterback, the success has kind of weaned there. Now I will be at that Clemson game. I know that one's going to be huge. I can't wait for that one. That's exciting. So
He's listed as a junior. Yeah, so he's a real
junior.
junior. He's a true junior.
I
Yeah.
told you guys it is. Oh, this year.
This year.
Last year
Yeah.
was his
Yeah.
sophomore year. So this
Yeah.
is it's so
Yeah.
hard to keep up with.
It's
I'm
so hard.
so ready for these COVID years to be done with.
I know. I
I don't know
know.
who's coming or going. So the next one after that, you do get a bye week after the
Yes.
Clemson game. So again, like
Which
we
is
said,
good.
if it's a huge win or an emotional loss or whatever the case may be, you get that week to kind of rebound before you go to back-to-back road games. And your first one is against the Duke Blue Devils in Durham, North Carolina. First game, first year for Manny Diaz, coming from Miami. Well, he's actually coming from DC at Penn State,
That's
but you
right.
know him from his years at Miami. And the thing about them with Duke is they had that really good year,
Yep.
and then I thought they were going to take a step back because that schedule I think was like 96 or something like that.
Yeah.
The year that they did good, but they also had a little bit tougher schedule last year, and they
That's
did.
right.
I know Riley Leonard had a lot to do. His injuries had a lot to do with that.
Right.
But I just think now, like if you had Elko again and they hadn't lost Riley Leonard, this game's immediately more interesting. But I think
That's
just
right.
starting over again, Game 7 versus Duke on a Friday night on the road. For those of you that are listening, I will be at that game
Let's
in North
go.
Carolina. So yes, any of you Carolina Knowles or whoever's in the area, hopefully we can put something together, meet up for that game. It should be a Friday night game, so that
Yeah.
should be fun as well. So I will be there. I've already booked the hotel, and so I will see you guys there if you're going. So let me know in the comments if you're going, if you're watching on YouTube. 2023 record for Duke ended up being 8-5. Of course, we know their marquee win was against Clemson. And then they went 4-4 in conference play, 6-1 at home. So they had a good home record, which included the beatdown of Clemson. 2023 team talent ranked 67th. So they're just still not where you are. Remember, you have never lost to Duke ever. So like that is something to watch this year. Now, again, you're going to want to, make sure that you don't put that at risk. So,
Right.
So then you have the scoring offense last year, 68, 26.9 points per game. We know their offense wasn't great. A lot of it had to do with the Riley Leonard injury. He's now at Notre Dame. He's more of a runner than a passer. Anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit with Notre Dame. Scoring defense was good. Mike Elko's a defensive mastermind. I mean, he had a great defense at Wake Forest, great defense when he was coordinator there, great defense at Duke, 16th, giving up 19 points per game. But they lost some important pieces off of that defense. Now, their transfer class rank is down at 52nd, so they haven't picked up a lot, but they did nail it. I mean, I was shocked when I saw this, to be honest. I was like, dude, what? Malik Murphy went where?
Yeah.
They did land a huge addition at quarterback. That is their 1 4-star transfer and then 3 3-star transfers. They do lose leading passer, leading rusher, leading receiver, and they do bring back their tackler. So, again, they also lost, I will say they lost their left tackle, Graham Barton, who is I believe, multi-year all ACC type of player. They lost some pieces on defense as well, especially on the defensive line, some of their best pass rushers. So with the addition of Malik Murphy, I think it really ups it's almost like adding Cam Ward to Miami. Like it ups your win floor immediately because I did not expect that.
That's right.
I thought that maybe they had captured lightning in a bottle by getting a guy like Riley Leonard, who's an underrated quarterback who ended up being really good. But without him, I just think Manny Diaz is a good defensive coordinator. He didn't do great as a head coach, but he had good defenses at Penn State. They had a good defense last year. I think Duke will be they'll remain maybe not the punching bag of the ACC like they used to be. I think they'll still be that kind of middle to lower third tier team. And why they start over again. You just kind of feel bad for Duke having to like get a little taste of success and then their coach bolts. But at the same time, he just waited for Jimbo to get fired and then he went back. But I think this is one where you go on the road, you keep the unbeaten record against Duke, and I think you get a good win here. And unless Malik Murphy really just turns out to be that dude, I think you can probably get this one in a comfortable fashion.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Manny, listen, Manny is a former Noel, so it's always really hard um, to really be like against him. Uh, but he's going to Duke, and they lost a lot. They lost Riley Leonard. They lost. I mean, that team was very heavily dependent upon um, uh, older players, grad transfers,
Yep.
seniors, and so they're all gone. I mean, it was loaded with
Right.
grad transfers and seniors, and they're gone. So this will be like this will. The term like rebuilding. This will be a rebuilding year for them, but they got Malik Murphy. I mean, that dude's
Yeah.
no slouch. I mean, he was a good
Yeah.
quarterback at Texas. So, I'm not saying they'll beat Florida State, but this is going to be a night game at Duke. It's a Friday game, and Florida State historically on Friday games, it's just not been a fun time for Florida State.
Yeah.
And Duke, that stadium, Wade Wallace, I think it's called Wallace Wade, whatever it is. It's not intimidating, but you saw what happened when Clemson went there last year.
They showed up.
And so Florida State's going to have to be ready because Florida State is coming off a bye week, but the next week is Miami week, right?
Yep.
And so Florida State's going to have to be focused to get this win so that they can then get into Miami. If they're thinking about Miami and all the trash talking, that's all that stuff. This is number 2 upset central right here.
Yeah,
this
of
is
trap
a tricky
games.
game. Trap
I
game.
definitely put this at number 2, and it really just depends on how the quarterback situation shakes out. Because, like you mentioned, when you're dependent on a lot of those older guys, this is very akin to what you saw with Wake Forest.
Yep.
Wake Forest had their most successful stretch because they had so many COVID seniors and 7th, 6th, 7th, 9th, 10th year seniors or whatever. When they lost all those guys,
that's right.
You see what happened. They went 3-9 last year, so it could be a step back, but it could be a trap game with Miami on the other side. They did show up at night for that Clemson game, so we'll just have to see how that one plays out. But speaking of, you kind of led us into this one. The next game coming up, big one. This is again your only set of back-to-back road games, and at least they're relatively close. But game 8 comes against Miami. Now it is on October the 26th. Of course, it's down in Doak South. We know that.
That's right.
2023 record 7-6. So again, it's an improvement from 5-7, but again, it's not where they should be for the amount of talent that they have. 3-5 in ACC play, 5-2 at home. 2023 team talent rank was 12th. Scoring offense was 39th at 31.5 points per game. Scoring defense 44th, 22.8 points per game allowed. Transfer rank is currently at 29th, 1 4-star. And everyone talks about all the recruiting prowess, but they sign a lot of 3-stars at Miami. That really jacks up some of their classes. So 9 3-stars there. They do lose their leading passer, but the guy that they replace him with is probably better than what they lost. They do bring back their leading rusher, which was not really a game changer for them. Restrepo, their leading receiver, does come back. And then they do bring back their leading tackler. Here's the thing about this Miami game, talking about tough stretches. They go to Louisville before Florida State. Now, Louisville has killed it in the portal. So I think they're going to be really good. I actually have changed who I think is probably going to be an ACC championship. I thought maybe Virginia Tech had an outside shot to begin with. I still think they do. They return a lot. But, man, Louisville really loaded up. So I think they could be back there. And then the week after, they get Duke. So they get 2 rivalry games in a row there because, that annual Miami-Duke rivalry has become a thing. But they did lose one of their better running back. I called him RB3 based on production, but he was within 150 yards of running back 1. So they lost a little bit of depth there. They did lose their 3rd and 4th wide receiver. They lost 2 offensive linemen. So there's a little bit of question marks on the offense there. On the defense, they lost both safeties, a starting defensive tackle, and a starting cornerback. Again, man, this really, when I look at Miami, obviously Cam Ward raises their ceiling for sure. But it's a kind of a put up or shut up year for Miami. First off, they have another just Charmin soft schedule outside of the Florida game on the road and Florida State. Like they do have a tough schedule, a very manageable schedule. A very soft schedule. So to me, this is a year where Miami should go 9-3, 10-2, and anything
Right.
less than that's a disappointment because you
Yep.
have the talent, you have your quarterback now. There's no more excuses in
Right.
Miami. It's, oh,
That's
these
right.
are all Manny guys, and I went
That's
back and I'm
right.
like, no, half of these guys were transfers that were brought in by
Correct.
Mario. So, but you
Correct.
got your guys. It's time to put up or shut up in South Florida. I think this is going to be, and we talked about this before the show, man. A lot of people don't like to hear this. This is, to me, one of your top 3, maybe top 2 hardest games on the schedule, just
Yep.
because Miami does have that talent. But again, when you look at what Mario Cristobal has done, and while I'll let you share some thoughts, I'll see if I can find the notes that I have on it. They have been the talent advantaged team in so many games.
Yep.
And still lost.
And
So
still
until
lost.
I see it from them, until I see them put it together, when you look at what he's done without Justin Herbert, it's not been impressive.
Nope.
So again, we'll have to wait. I'm with a wait and see with Miami. All the potential's there. Easy schedule, talented roster. You got your quarterback. You saw the things come out the other day. Ja'Cory Brown was on a podcast saying that he doesn't think Cam Ward even really wants to be there.
I know. I saw that. I was like,
so, so maybe some culture, locker room issues there. I don't know. We'll see. But I still think I think this is going to be one of your top 3 hardest games because it's a rivalry, because of the talent that they have and where it is. But I still think Florida State, again, I think you have the coaching advantage, and I think that I think they're going to get it done. But this could be a tough one.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. You're absolutely right, man. Miami. We hate Miami. Florida State is 5-2 since 2010 down at Doak South. Okay, 5-2 since 2010 at Doak South. In 2021, Miami had the better team. And Florida State, I know this was at Doak, but Florida State was up 20-7 at halftime on that better team, the more talented team, right? Now that was, I think that was Manny Diaz, so that wasn't Cristobal, but still, it's just this thing right now with Florida State is on the climb. And outside of, like you said, with Justin Herbert, Mario Cristobal has proven to be a terrible coach. He can recruit the heck out of college players. Like, we'll give them that. Man, they've won the recruiting national championship every offseason for the last 3 years or whatever it's been. I mean, gosh. I mean, their fans, the moment they got Cam Ward, they got on Twitter. They were like, oh, we're going to dominate. We're,
hang the banner.
Hang the offseason championship banner. Okay. But what matters is what happens on the field, Miami. I'm going to just tell you this right now. Now, Cam Ward, don't get us wrong. Everybody wanted him, including Florida State. I mean, they held out because he was 1A, and as we know, DJ was probably likely 1B. They were pretty equal. But once it came clear that Florida State wasn't going to get him, they went all in on DJ. They believed that. Cam Ward went to the NFL. NFL said, not happening this year. So then he held Miami hostage. So Miami had to break the bank to get him there because Miami was going to have some JV high school football player play their quarterback for him this year.
Puffenberger.
Right? So, like Cam Ward, he's electric. He is phenomenal, but he is turnover prone. I can't even remember I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's like 14 fumbles this year. A lot. Let's just go with
fumbles,
a lot.
Sacks, interceptions,
right? Yep. So for every, I forgot, I read somewhere it was like for every explosive play, there are 3 to 4 bad plays. I forget what the ratio was, but it was somewhere like that. I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
And so the talent is going to be there. Let's make no word about it. This, to me, is another toss-up game. I would love to just go be fully confident Florida State's going to kick their butts. It's going to be great again. This is going to be a toss-up game. I give Florida State the slight edge because Florida State has proven consistently that they're prepared for this game. I mean, every Miami game Mike Norvell's coached in, he's undefeated, right? Because I don't count the COVID year. He didn't get to coach in that one. He's undefeated. And until, like you said, I'm right there with you, Jesse, until Miami proves that they can actually coach up to the level of their talent, I'm always going to pick against them.
Right, because they keep saying, well, we're loading up now. It's like, but y'all have had talent for years, and you've just never done anything with it. And the notes that I have is Mario Cristobal without Justin Herbert. And we can have a whole separate show on the state of the Big Three coaching. That's one that's coming up. Without Justin Herbert, he's 19-19 against Power 5 teams, 3-9 in ranked games, 0-3 in bowls, 16-14 in conference play, which was including a 7-2 record in 2021 against teams that were 36-50. Now, when you talk about teams that are ranked higher than them in the talent composite, They have beat two, and they also lost to those same two teams, Clemson and Texas A&M. But when you talk about him facing teams where they had the talent, he is 10-11. Has
Oh,
a losing record against teams that they have a better talent advantage in. Now, for reference, I understand that you can couch this a little bit because I'm not including the COVID year or whatnot. But over the
right.
last 2 years, this is the last 2 years for Mike Norvell in 22 and 23 against teams where they are less talented, against more talented teams. Mike Norvell is 8-2,
Mm.
and against teams where they have the talent advantage against lesser teams, he's 19-2. So that right there kind of just tells
Tells
you
you right there.
it's coaching. It's coaching, man. And again, until I see it now, again, like you said, Cam Ward is a probably a higher. He's a high ceiling guy. But
Right.
he's also a little bit
But
below floor guy. Even
yes,
as good as he was, now I understand you're gonna have more talent to work with it at Miami than he did at Washington State. They were still 5-7,
yes,
and I
yeah,
think they won 7 games the year before, so
that's
they
right.
weren't great with him.
Right.
So
No.
if you have a guy, and that was another thing that came out in the Ja'Cory Brown interview. He said, now he didn't give a number, but he said like, bro, if you saw the number that I saw, wow. And so
Yeah.
I really do think it became a situation where Miami knew
They were
you
desperate.
got to win this year. You have
Yeah.
to win
Yep.
this year, or else things might start to fade down there. And so I think they opened up the purse strings and they got who they needed to get. But
Right.
again, that also takes the excuse out with that
That's right.
schedule that they got. If they don't win 9 or 10 games, it's going to be. I'm not
That's right.
sold still.
That's right. And just with Cam Ward, I mean, like you said, the ceiling is high for him. The floor is really low for him.
Right.
His range of good to bad is so wide. Whereas with DJ, his range is much closer. Where you almost know he has the arm for the explosive play. He can run. His problem has been the short to medium accuracy, which I think Mike will scheme around to help that be better. Whereas with Cam, I mean, you have just this wide, you're just like, I'm not sure which Cam we're going to get. And I like knowing. With Jordan, you just knew we're in this box, we're going to be good. I like that with DJ. Miami's got some stuff to figure out. And to have that of a wide range of floor to ceiling with a quarterback with somebody who has proven to be who has ruined quarterbacks.
Yeah. Why did you come back to Miami to improve your draft stock?
Exactly.
It's insane. He came back for money, but it'll be interesting to see. I mean, he could certainly win you games, and that's the dangerous part with him. But he could also lose you games by turnovers and sacks and all that thing. So Miami's going to be a wild card this year. It'll be interesting to see. We'll see how things play out after spring. But it's a loaded roster. They have a good defensive line and all that stuff. So we'll see. We'll visit that more later on. But now the next team coming up is your last ACC home game, and that is Game 9 against UNC at home. Drake May off to the NFL. That makes you feel a heck of a lot better about this game. November 2nd, like we said, at home. 2023 record 8-5. Again, just another Mac Brown special of a year where it looks like they have the talent. Again, look at this talent rank, 17th. They were more talented than Florida State and went 8-5. 4-4 in ACC play. Road games. This also gave me a little bit of vote of confidence here. 1-3 in away games. Ooh. So you get them in Doak. Again, Mac Brown, he has never beaten Florida State as a head coach. So that is there as well. I mean, even remember back to, 2020 or 2021 when they came in as a top 5 team and lost to Florida State. So, again, I always joke about the Mac Brown special, but it's a real thing. And so I've heard they've made some staff changes on the defensive side that should get things a little bit better there, but you got some things to replace. So their scoring offense last year was 20th, 34.5 points per game. Scoring defense was 75th, 27.3 points per game. We know they don't do well on defense. Transfer class is currently at 49th, 1 4-star transfer, 6 3-star transfers. And I got here that, of course, we know their leading passer is out. That was Drake May off to the NFL. Their leading rusher does come back.
Yeah.
But their leading receiver, he's not back, but I put an asterisk by that, and I'll explain that in a second. And their leading tackler is gone as well. Now, the reason I have an asterisk by that is because technically their leading receiver by yardage had 12 more yards. I think it's J.J. Johnson or something like that. He is back, but Tez Walker played in a lot. He had 12 less yards and 5 more touchdowns in 5 less games.
Yeah.
So he was by far their best receiver. So you just lost a generational, in a sense, quarterback. You just lost a really talented wide receiver. But they do bring some pieces back. They get back their leading running back who had 1,500 yards on the
Oof.
season and 15 touchdowns. But I do want to point out he had 253 rushing attempts. Trey Benson, for reference, and Toafili combined had 225.
Mm.
So, there's UNC again. Now, they do bring in Max Johnson, who is probably going to be their starting quarterback.
Yeah, very likely.
I mean, he's got some talent, but he's never really put it together on the field a whole lot. So Carolina's going to be a lot of guesswork this year.
Yeah.
They go to UVA before you. They get a
That's
bye
right.
week after. This is game 9 for Florida State. It's later in the season. You'll kind of know who and what North Carolina is.
Yeah.
They've done pretty well with recruiting and stuff like that. But I just still, and you look at the team talent rank, it's for 2023. We don't know what it's going to be for 2024 yet. It's close. So they're close in talent. They didn't quite do what you did in the portal, but man, it just comes down to it's almost like Miami.
Yep.
All the hype in the world for North Carolina does not translate to their final season record. They just still keep losing unexplainable games. And so it's going to be interesting to see how North Carolina plays out, but I still feel good about winning this game.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't say this during the Miami one, but this connects to North Carolina. Miami, one of the reasons I like Miami in October always is because over the last 20 years, Miami has proven they're what do they call it? Front runners? They're front runners, right? They start hot, they fade towards the end of the year. Well, the same has been true with North Carolina, and especially under Mac Brown. They start hot. Everybody's talking about him in that baby blue, Michael Jordan. Oh, look at him. And then they fade towards the end of the year. I mean, last year they lost their last 3 games, right?
Yeah.
They lost 3 straight at the end of the year. And Max Johnson, I mean, he's the son of former Florida State, quarterback Brad Johnson. And so, we try to be respectful, but he's been a game manager at LSU, at Texas A&M. He hasn't really been the quarterback that's going to go out and win you big time games. Now, could he put it all together and figure it out? Absolutely. That's possible. They do get his brother, Jake Johnson, that comes in as well. Again, because this is after Miami, so this is a home game after Miami. We're depending on how Florida State does at Miami. They'll be jacked for this. They'll be juiced for this. The crowd will be juiced for it. I have Florida State winning this game, but I'm not going to say it's going to be a blowout. But I'll say that it should be at least 2 touchdowns by the end of the score.
I'm not sweating this one, but I still think, again, you need to see what they are. But you make a good point. I mean, this is still a team that comes in and they got a lot of preseason hype with Drake May. Double overtime against Appalachian State.
Yep.
You beat Duke by 2 points in double overtime without Riley Leonard. Didn't even play in the game. And then, like you said, they go on to lose the last 3 games of the season and get absolutely smoked by West Virginia in the bowl game without Drake May.
May.
Right. So maybe that's predictive of your future. So we'll see. I think North Carolina is still a TBD. It's a wait to see how that one goes. But I do like that one. I still feel good about that one. Now, the next game is probably what we would assume the toughest, maybe the biggest on the schedule here. Originally it didn't start well. I mean, this is a Notre Dame team that lost to Marshall a few years ago, but then they had a real big bounce back season. I am actually a big fan of Marcus Freeman. I think he's going to do well there. I think he's a great coach. I'm glad they stuck with him and didn't kind of write him off early on, for their sake, not our sake. But game 10 against Notre Dame, November 9th on the road. You have a bye week after this, so you can kind of just push all your chips into this game. They do get Navy before you and UVA after, so nothing crazy there. I know the Navy coach, Nia Montalolo, I think I said that right. He's now at San Jose State. I don't know if they're still going to run the triple option or not. He's actually an air raid coach. I think he just ran it there for talent perspective. But, sometimes those triple option games can really beat you up. So that could be interesting there as well. But they did go 10-3 last year, 4-2 versus ACC teams. They don't play in a conference. They were 5-1 at home. Team talent rank. This is what makes Notre Dame one of the more dangerous teams on your schedule. Talent ranking in 2023 was 11th. Their scoring offense, and this is what I talked about too, they're one of the more balanced teams on your schedule. 7th on scoring offense, 39.2 points per game. 7th in scoring defense, 15.9 points per game allowed. Transfer class, kind of middle of the road, not great, not terrible by any means, coming in at 36. 2 4-star transfers, 6 3-star transfers. Now, Here's the big takeaway with Notre Dame. They got some questions to answer.
Yes, they do.
You see a lot of red on these boxes if you're watching YouTube. They lose their leading passer, Sam Hartman. They lose their leading rusher, the Estime kid. They lose their leading receiver. They also lost their third leading receiver. They did bring in Bo Collins, of course, and they did lose their leading tackler. They also lost two really good offensive linemen, Joe Alt, who was a first-team All-American. He's gone too. So, again, man, the thing with Notre Dame, they have the talent. I think they have good coaching. This is a team that can be dangerous at home. You know, they're good. Obviously, we said 5-1 at home. Man, it just comes back to, and I will say the other thing, the running back that they lost, the Estime kid, had 1,341 yards and 18 touchdowns.
He's a monster.
Their running back number 2, 385 yards, 1 touchdown last season. So you're losing 1,000 yards of production.
Yep.
And by the way, they have not signed a portal running back so far. So what you see is what you get unless they get somebody in spring. So
That's right.
Notre Dame is going to be your farthest road game, the coldest weather, one of the most talented teams outside of Clemson. This is the one everybody had circled before we even knew the order, that this was going to be the hardest game of the year. I just think it also is fortunate that they lose so much. That it gives you a little bit of advantage. Now, of course, we know Sam Hartman's out. Insert Riley Leonard from Duke. You know, everybody's indifferent. I understand Riley Leonard's a good quarterback. You put more talent around him, probably better offensive coaching. I believe their offensive coordinator even came from LSU, and Matt Howson was the guy that was with with Jaden Daniels. So they actually gave him like a really great grade because they're like, oh, he's going to have great coaching. But I'm like, I get that, man. But he's still more of a runner. And like when you look at what he did against good defenses last year, against Clemson and against Notre Dame, his numbers were pretty terrible. So I'm still in a little bit of a wait and see with them. I think he's obviously better. He's a good replacement, but they lost a lot. And I think that's going to help Florida State. This is the one I'm the most worried about.
Yeah.
But, you know, I still think if Florida State pans out to be the way we think they can, I think it's a winnable game.
I absolutely agree. I think it's a winnable game. Do I think they would win? That's the question. Yeah. Florida State is 5-6 in its history versus Notre Dame. They're 0-2. They're 2-3 at Notre Dame, and they're 0-2 at Notre Dame in the month of December or of November. And this, I mean, it's not a rivalry, but it's just this game. Every time we play them, it's always just so tricky with them. Yes, they finally, Sam Hartman, you know, him and his 3 kids and his mortgage and 401k, it's finally gone. But they get Riley Leonard, and we saw last year at Florida State a hobbled Riley Leonard, so it's kind of hard to judge him. What we saw now, again, like you said, against better defenses, he really struggled. So he'll be healthy this time. He'll be at home this time. It'll be the cold weather this time. All those things. I think Florida State will be better as an overall team. Notre Dame will have talent on the team, but I think Florida State will be a better overall team as well. And let's be real. The last 2-3 times that Mike Norvell has played a Marcus Freeman defense, he has lit them the heck up. So you think about back to 2021 when they opened the season. I mean, he put 38 or 41 points on them. You think about the 2 games back-to-back when Marcus Freeman was the defensive coordinator at Cincinnati and Memphis with Mike Norvell's offense, put up points galore against that defense. So I would imagine that this is going to be probably a high-scoring game. When I say high-scoring, you're probably looking at a final score somewhere with both teams somewhere in the high 30s, low 40s. That's what I would imagine. Notre Dame is coming off a bye week before they play Florida State. So that's key. They're coming off a bye week. Florida State is coming off of playing North Carolina, Miami, and Duke. So this is the toughest stretch of the season. The ACC did not do Florida State any favors here, which though I think is good. And why I think it's good is because last season, Florida State had all of its toughest games were all spread out. Now they're putting them all together in the middle of the season. This will keep the nation's eyeballs on Florida State, especially if they're winning, to see how well they do. This is going to be the toughest part of that stretch. This is a toss-up. I don't know. I don't know if I can pick this one right now.
It's tough to say. I think you just got to wait and see after the spring to really kind of feel this one out a little bit better.
Yeah.
I will say when you look at Riley Leonard, had an amazing season in 2022, their breakout season at Duke.
That's right.
2,900 passing yards, 700 yards on the ground, a ton of touchdowns, 33 touchdowns, but they didn't play anybody. They didn't play anybody good. Last year, this was before the injury in the Clemson game and the Notre Dame game, because he literally got injured on like the last play of the Notre Dame game. So you can count the whole game.
Right.
Against Clemson, 51.5% completion percentage, 175 passing yards, 0 touchdowns, 98 on the ground and 1 touchdown. Again, he's a good run threat.
Right.
Versus Notre Dame, 44.4% completion percentage, 134 yards through the air, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, 88 on the ground, and 0 touchdowns. So he's not done good against great defenses. So that's, to me, what is really going to kind of be the X factor here. And, you know, Notre Dame does have that history of kind of blowing big games. So
yes, they do.
It'll be interesting. But I do think, I mean, at least most of your tough games aren't like front loaded last year with Clemson and LSU in the same month. But yeah, I mean, like you said, this is a bit of a tough stretch. And I guess I missed the bye week. I just looked at the team before they played. But yeah, I mean, that could be a little advantage there. This is going to be a tough one. I mean, it is what it is. Like if you were going to predict 11-1 versus 12-0, it's kind of like I did last year. I picked them to be 11-1 with the road game at Clemson because of the environment going on the road, the way things are, the talent that they have. It was all those things. Now, of course, I adjusted that when they got blasted by Duke.
That's right.
And we could see Notre Dame play out a whole different way. You may not be worried about this game by the time it comes around. But at the same time, this is probably the one that you're going to point to that could be that loss, which stinks because it's late season.
It is
playoff season, but it also doesn't count towards your ACC.
That's right.
So it doesn't really matter. Like you can still get that automatic qualifier bid. Now, game 11,
and it doesn't real quick, and it doesn't hurt if you're undefeated at this point or you have one loss at this point. This doesn't knock you out of the playoff picture if you lose this game, because remember, it's the top 12 that are going to get in. So
and you can still snag that automatic qualifier bid by winning the ACC. And there's a good possibility because, you know, when you talk about teams that get overhyped every year, or like a Miami or whatever, everybody's already like, oh, they're in the top whatever quarter to ACC. It's like, for what? For what? They haven't won in 20 years. Notre Dame is another team that gets love in the polls no matter what. So
that's right.
It's a good possibility. This is going to be one of your ranked games. I honestly, man, looking at the schedule, I mean, if we're being honest, it's kind of cheeks. You know what I mean? Like when you talk about the schedule. So like with Clemson probably losing to Georgia, unless they upset them now. If they lose to Georgia, you might only have maybe about 2-3 ranked teams. Miami could get ranked.
Maybe.
We'll see. Florida's going to be terrible by the time you get to them. We'll talk about that next. But let's just quickly touch on game 11. Not a whole lot to say here. Game 11 against Charleston Southern, 11-23 at home, coming off of a bye week after that Notre Dame game. This is one of those bye weeks that's kind of misplaced in the schedule that I really didn't love. But again, like I said, you're coming off that Notre Dame game. You get that extra week to basically prepare for Florida. You get 2 weeks to prepare. Well, really 3 weeks when you get game week. About 3 weeks to prepare for Florida, and then the ACC championship on the other side if you've made it to that. And you'll already know at that point. So this Charleston Southern team, they were 4-7 last year, 2-4 in conference, 0-5 on the road. Now, I will say it was their first season under a new staff. Shouldn't matter with an FCS team. They did play one Power 5 team last year in Clemson, lost 66-17. I did note that game was 24-17 at halftime. So they did sneak up on Clemson a little bit, but I think that was more to do with Clemson than Charleston Southern. This one should be a blowout. Honestly, we talked about this before the game or before the show. Like, you know, as gently as you can say this, I think from last year, the things that you learned, this is last year. Remember, North Alabama was senior night, and Mike Norvell said, "What am I supposed to do? Not play a senior on his last home game in Doak because of the opponent?"
Right.
Well, it's not senior night this year.
No,
Florida is senior night. So to me, honestly, you probably knowing what happened last year, and you feel better about Brock as your backup now than Tate. I don't know if DJ even plays in this game. I don't think you take the risk. I think that's going to be a lesson learned, and you have another game where they can get their last game at Doak. You should still run away with this one by 40, 50 points. So I'm not, even with the backups, I'm not worried about this game in any way, shape, or form. This is a tune-up game before Florida. It is what it is. You win, you move on. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this other than it should be a blowout.
Other than it should be a blowout. Yeah, they lost 66-17 to Clemson. They lost 77-21 to Western Carolina last year.
Ouch.
Okay.
Ouch.
Mike, listen. Bye week. This is basically a bye week. Don't play DJ.
Don't
Don't
play
play
anybody.
DJ. Don't play anybody.
Right.
Like give them 2 weeks, play your backups, this is a great game if you're trying to prepare for 2025 being the Brock Glenn era. This is a great game to give it all to him, right?
Yep.
Especially if we're undefeated.
Right. I want to see Luke Kromenhawk in this game.
Exactly. Come on, Mike.
And I do think this year you will see them try to prepare if they get the opportunity, if they get up big in some of these games. I do think you'll see more of the backups playing because I think he knows, you just saw last year, you want to see not only the development come further along for those players, but you also want the nation to see them have a sample set where if again, it's not a 14 playoff, so it won't be the same situation.
Right.
But maybe if Brock Glenn has a full game under his belt and a couple of quarters here and a couple of quarters there, then it's not so much guesswork because Tate really didn't play at all last year.
Right.
Other than like the Southern Miss game. So I think you will see them dig deeper into the depth chart when it is available to kind of build that depth and to let people know we do have players down the depth chart that can play. So, yeah, to me, I would rest most of my starters in this game or maybe I don't even want to say one series. I don't. No. You know, if you want them to play, go out, let them take a knee on first down and then put the rest in. So, but, yeah, you should win that one. You should feel good about that one. Like you said, just I think you get that win, you get out of there, and you just try and avoid injury. That's after last year, that's the biggest scare. So you just focus on that and get out of there. So now – the next game, obviously, last home game in Doak, one of the biggest ones of the year, as always, Game 12 versus Florida, November 30th, Thanksgiving week, inside Doak Campbell Stadium. Last year, they went 5-7, 3-5 in conference. Away games were 1-4, terrible on the road. So that makes you feel a little good there. Again, though, this is the same thing with Miami. 2023 team talent rank 15th. So they got talent there. I mean, I feel like to me with Florida, it's more concentrated talent at certain places rather than more spread out across the roster with Miami. But their scoring offense was 59th, 28.4 points per game. Scoring defense was 78th, not that great. Gave up 27.6 points per game. Transfer class rank, they did pretty good in the portal this year. So top 25 transfer class. Right, they had to because the seat's warm under Billy, and it's going to be a tough year because of that schedule. But 4 4-star transfers, 7 3-star transfers. They do bring back their leading passer, Graham Mertz, who, I'll eat a little crow here. He was better than I gave him credit for. But, I mean, again, when you don't throw the ball down the field, you just dink and dunk, it's not hard to have good numbers.
Not too hard.
You do bring back your leading rusher in Montrell Johnson, but you also lost Trevor Etienne to Georgia, your rival. So they were pissed about that one. But you do – so you lose a significant amount of production in the rushing game there as well. Also, you do lose your leading receiver who decided to move on and go to the NFL. And then you also lose the leading tackler on the defense as well. So they lost their wide receiver running back 2. They lost 2 offensive linemen. We have one of them. And then they did lose on the defense. They lost their defensive end, a safety, a linebacker, a defensive tackle, and 2 cornerbacks. So, you know, man, now they have a talented receiver, a freshman receiver who can put up some numbers for them, you know, but losing some of the production that they did on offense and just looking at that schedule, man, it's going to be brutal. I mean, when you talk about Florida, now here's the interesting thing about Florida. If they beat Miami and they get them at home, there's a good chance they could start off 5-0. I mean, they got like Mississippi State, Texas A&M with a new coach. They could start out well. But, buddy, it's going to go downhill fast. So, first off, they get Ole Miss before you, who might have one of the best transfer portal classes out there right now. So, they're going to be a title contender this year. Then the SEC championship is the week after Florida State. So, they're pretty much free that weekend. They don't have anything to worry about there. But you look at the schedule, man. Coming off a bye week before Halloween, they get Georgia, at Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I don't know if forfeiting would be better, but like if you need to put in if Billy needs to put in a PTO request, now's a good time to do it because it's going to be ugly for that one. I mean, it's going to be bad. And I'll say this and I'll kick it to you, but the difference to me with Florida and Miami is they both have that similar level of talent.
Yeah.
Florida, I don't think Napier's a bad coach. And this is why I want to have that Big 3 episode. he's just had an unreal gauntlet to go. I mean, they have had
Yeah.
an insane amount of tough schedules, and 2024 didn't do them any favors
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
So the back half of that schedule is absolutely brutal. So I think Florida is, they have the potential to be decent. I mean, they got a returning quarterback, they got a good running back, they got some of these guys, but how invested are they? And we know it's a rivalry game, so they'll be excited about that. But they're going to be on the road inside Doak Campbell
Yeah.
Stadium, coming off of potentially 4 losses, could be your 5th straight loss. That's a big ask for somebody,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially if you have a lame duck coach that, I don't know, maybe he might not even be employed by then. If they lost 4 straight, you just don't know, man.
Yeah, I look at the schedule of Florida. And I'm just like, yeah, you could. If you beat Miami, you could be undefeated and everybody be celebrating and like, look, we're big and bad. And then that 6 games leading to FSU are like Tennessee, Kentucky,
Yeah.
which has beaten them last 3 times, Georgia, which is probably going to smack them, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss. Oh, like the SEC somebody in that program did something wrong to Greg Schlenke, because I mean that schedule is murder's row.
They didn't
My
do Napier
goodness.
any favors. Yeah, and I didn't even mention at Tennessee and Kentucky. It's just they
Gosh.
could be on a 7. They could lose the last 7 games.
Listen,
and I would love it. I'm here for it.
I'll be all for it. I'd be all for it. Here's the thing about Billy Napier, or as they call him, Billy Taggart. He's actually a pretty decent coach. I mean, he
I
can
agree.
develop players. He can recruit. So he has the opposite problem of Mario Cristobal, right?
Right.
Mario can't coach and can't develop, but he's a great recruiter. Billy can coach and can recruit and can develop, but I think he's a terrible CEO of a program. I mean, the dude literally went out and hired the Rural King store manager for his defensive coordinator, you know? I mean, like that kid, that Austin, whatever his name is, he he's just talking a bunch of gibberish and don't even know what he's doing. That they had to go out and hire a co-defensive coordinator. Co-defensive coordinator. That basically means, look, I can't fire you because I owe you too much money, so I'm going to keep you on, but I'm going to have somebody else call the plays. That's basically what he did.
Right.
Special teams is a huge issue every time under Billy Napier. What are they doing there? Now, listen, I need you to keep doing it, but I'm just questioning. What are you doing? Graham Mertz, I'll eat crow. He's better than I thought, but also when you deke and dunk down the field, are you really that good? You're basically running Wisconsin at Florida. So what is that? I think by the time they get to Florida State, I would imagine I'm going to go out on a limb here. Oof, I don't know if I should say this. I'm going to just say I would be surprised if Billy is still the coach by the end of the season. I would be very surprised.
Yep. And I think you let them wear this one because you don't want to bring in a new coach to that schedule.
Who are you bringing in? Right.
But it's going to be hard, man, because they're probably going to put together another losing season. I mean, unless they just absolutely sneak up on some people. And even then, I mean, even if you, I mean, I think if you put like together a 7-6 year, 7-5 with that schedule, that's probably a win for them.
I actually think he could keep his job if he went 7-5.
Right. And you lost Pearsall was the guy I was trying to think of. He was actually pretty good. I don't think Restrepo's great at Miami, but I think Pearsall was pretty decent. But Eugene Wilson is the kid I'm thinking of at receiver who is a talented freshman. So they got a few pieces, but man, unless they kill it in the portal in the spring, they're probably in trouble. Like I envision by the time that game in Doak is over, like the picture, the meme after the Popeye sandwich came out where the workers just sitting on the bench like holding their head. Billy's just going to be tired at the end of the season, man. That man is going to need like a cigarette and a strong drink after that last 6 or 7 games, because it's going to be an effing of epic proportions the way that schedule set up for them. So, like you said, I think he must have pissed somebody off in the SEC office because they didn't do them any favors. But with that being said, I think you went in there and I know they had a freshman last year, and you had your backup last year. You still went into the swamp and beat them.
Yeah,
I think this year getting them in Doak Campbell Stadium, I think that you feel like DJ Jordan was better than Graham Mertz. I think DJ is as good or better than Graham Mertz. So I think when you just look at that situation, I still think Florida State's going to get this one done.
Yeah,
I still think they'd get the win. Maybe if they weren't on the back end of a tough stretch like that, maybe, but I don't know. So with that being said, guys, that wraps up every game on the 2024 schedule. I'm excited for it. I think this is a very manageable schedule. I think it sets Florida State up to have another very successful year. And with that being said, we'll wrap up the show with kind of a where we feel pre-spring win-loss prediction.
Yep.
Because, again, remember, guys, a lot of this can change. You got Keon Coleman in the spring. You got Dylan Gibbons in the spring. You could lose some people in the spring. There's a lot that can happen between now and then for you and other teams. Once we get to take a look at them in the spring game and see how the rest of the portal season shakes out, then we'll kind of be able to do a more accurate assessment. But as of right now, Michael, I think my ceiling again is, and this is pending on staying healthy, of course. I think your ceiling here again is 12-0 in 2024. Yeah. I think your floor is probably 9-3, and that's your absolute floor. I think anything below 9-3 would be a disappointment. I think, and again, some people might not like the comments, but I'm just being honest, guys. I mean, this is I try to have credibility here. I hate Miami as much as everybody else.
Absolutely.
I think your three toughest games that make me sweat a little bit is Notre Dame, Clemson, and Miami. Those are the three that I worry about.
Yep.
But outside of that, I think you get Clemson at home. I think you got a little rebuilding to go on at Notre Dame, and then Miami just still has not put it together. So I'm feeling like probably an 11-1 season as we stand right now until I get to see things in action. I think, again, 9-3 is your floor, 12-0 is your ceiling, 11-1 is most likely. I think you should be able, as long as you get past Clemson, I think you should be able to make it into the ACC championship. You don't play Louisville, you don't play Virginia Tech, you don't play NC State. The ACC schedule was great for you this year. So as long as you don't have any upsets that you weren't planning on,
right?
And you never, obviously they call it upsets for a reason. You weren't planning on it, but I think it's probably going to be Florida State, Louisville in the ACC championship again.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the ceiling is 12-0 for sure, and I think the floor is 9-3. I think if you have a season that's worse than 9-3, again, an 8-4 season, which is what I originally was thinking. It's not a bad season, but you're just left with a sour taste of oh man, those whatever those 2 losses or 3 losses were, that likely means that you either lost all of Clemson, Miami, and Notre Dame, and somewhere you got upset if you're at 8-4, right? Yep. It'd be weird if you won all those games and then lost the ones you shouldn't have lost.
Right. And I will say real quick, if you think about it, it also matters how it plays out. Because let's just say you drop one of those 3 games, not named Notre Dame, and you lose Notre Dame. Because of the divisions are gone now, if you have one ACC loss, there's still the potential that you could make it into the ACC championship and then into the playoffs as a 10-2 team.
Correct. Yep, that's a really good point. I'm with you at the same time too as well. Right now, I have because we don't have as much information as we need on Notre Dame, and because of the history, I have that down as a loss right now. So I have this down as an 11-1 season pre-spring. Now, after spring, when we know what the roster looks like for Notre Dame, when we know what Florida State looks like better, when I'm going to watch that I'm going to try to watch all of the big 3 games, spring games, so I can watch as well. Once I kind of know that, then I'll be able to confidently say this is what I think the season could be.
Yep.
But right now, pre-spring, I have them at 11-1 with a loss to Notre Dame going into the ACC championship game.
Right. And I think again, it is hypothetical to some point, because remember last year I was like, okay, Clemson's going to be tough. And I picked 11-1, and then you see them lose to Duke and you're like, okay, we're going 12-0. It is what it is.
12-0.
But that game still went to overtime.
That's right.
Clemson, so you just never know. But yeah, I think we'll learn a lot after the spring and the spring portal period. But again, this schedule, to me, I give it like a 7 to 8 out of 10 out of happiness. I didn't expect that from the ACC for sure, but I think this sets you up for a great year. It's a very manageable schedule.
Yeah.
I think your road games are very manageable. You get a lot of good home games here that you feel good about winning. And so, man, I'm excited. I'm ready to get into it.
That's right.
I know I'll be at Clemson and Florida and the Duke game, so hopefully I can see there. I know you'll be at every home game.
That's
I'm going to try to be off at least for every game so we can hit up the post-game shows for all of these this year. I'm just excited, man. It's so fun to start talking about it already. I know it's like 200 and something days away, so it still feels like forever away, but now you're getting to where you can really start to get excited. You can start to book your hotels. You might have to take out a second mortgage to get a hotel in Tallahassee.
That's right.
Which is ridiculous, but now you can really start to put pen to paper to figuring things out. And that's what's
Absolutely.
exciting about this next season coming up.
Yeah, and I'll just say this one last thing. One of the things I love most about this is last year, you remember after the bye, Florida State had 9 straight games.
Yes.
And as you
Yes.
saw, the injury toll, the offense really started to go. I mean, the offense was trending downward before Jordan got hurt. And then it got hurt, and then it kind of fell off the cliff there. So what I love is that you have 3 buys, though we would have loved them to be placed just a little bit differently.
Right.
You have these 3 buys now you have these markers. So where if you have injury, you have these strategic times in the season where you can rest those guys, where you can get those guys healthy. So now you're not going 9 games and you're just trying to piece together an offense. So that's what I love most about this schedule too, that the way it sets up. And so if you do go undefeated again, man, now you should be right. You should be going into November. Mike Norvell has always said, man, you should be playing your best ball in November. Well, this schedule actually sets up for that to be possible.
Right. Hopefully you're not going into like an ACC championship game with offensive linemen that almost have to be carted onto the field, let alone off the field, because they're just so beat up. So, yeah, I think that's a good point. I think the 2 bye weeks is good for the health of the players overall. I think it's good for the sport. And that week 0 game gets you that 3rd one. So
that's right.
I think it sets up really well. I think it's very manageable. Like I said, you miss some of the tougher ACC teams. Right. You don't have that crazy out a conference schedule. Now, again, the next couple of years, you got Alabama, Georgia. So we'll see what Alabama is. That's going to be interesting.
That's right.
Kind of experiment there to see how that goes. But overall, guys, it sounds like it's going to set up for another successful season, and we can't wait to bring you coverage of it all season long. So if you've watched this long, guys, and you've enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe. We would have greatly appreciate that. We have passed 1,000 subscribers, so we thank you for that. Also, check out Alumni Hall FSU. New season, you're going to need some new gear.
That's right.
Go check them out. Get 10% off with code SPEAR at their new location, 1415 Timber Lane Road, as well as online at alumnihall.com. Thank you guys so much. We're going to work on some shows coming up. We got some fun stuff planned for you guys, so make sure you check back for that. But as always, guys, thanks for tuning in. Thank you for watching, and go Noles.